Hello everyone, I am Sadat Mosaddek, lecturer of Tourism and Hospitality Management, welcoming you all in this Cambrian digital class. I hope all you are doing great and ready for this class, aren't you? So let's start our today's class. Our today's class will be Standard of Performance, which is in short known as SOP, used in 5-star hotels all over the world. So let's go through the learning objectives of today's class. As you can see on the screen that after completing this class, you will be able to understand the followings such as definition of standard of performance, which is SOP. Then I will discuss about how to welcome and seat guests at restaurants or 5-star hotels. And at the end, I would like to discuss telephone alphabets used in hospitality industry. So let's move on to our first topic, which is, as you can see on the screen, that definition of standard of performance. In a 5-star hotel, the employees of all departments have to perform so many small tasks in their day-to-day operation. So the hotel has already set the standards for all departments to perform their tasks in order to avoid lapse in the service, and they have already trained their staff according to the standards. In this way, the employees are maintaining the consistency. Doesn't matter whoever is providing the service to the guest. So now you come to know the definition of standard of performance. Now let's move on to our next topic, which is standard of performance, welcome and seat the guest. Here in this SOP, the guest will have the first impression, and this will set the tone of the whole dining experience by establishing or developing positive attitude or positive first impression. So let's go through it. First of all, as you can see on the screen, that the first step, establishing eye contact. Here the hostess has to make the eye contact, as you can see that on the screen. Now let's go through the standards. The first standard is, see that you are at the entrance of your restaurant at the hostess desk or station. Here let me explain you one thing, that hostess desk or station, they both are actually same. Let's have a look at on the screen that the picture of the hostess desk. As you can see that on the picture, there is a nicely decorated entrance of a restaurant where you can see the wooden panel, then you can see the aquarium, and just beside that there is a desk. This desk is known as hostess desk or station. And one thing I must tell you, that this hostess desk cannot be unattended. If the hostess is escorting a group of guests, the other employee must take the responsibility to stand to welcome the other guest. So you have just seen the picture of the hostess desk or station. Let's move on to the next standards of establishing eye contact. See that you establish eye contact as soon as guest enters the restaurant. And the next standard is, see that you have warm smile. Here let me explain you the importance of smile. If you smile in front of a guest, this will ease up the pressure of the employees, and this will show the dedication and sincerity of the staff, and you are there to provide the superior service. Let's move on to the next step, which is step 2, welcome the guest. And the standards are, see that you greet and welcome the guest when guest is on 2-meter distance from you. So here you have to keep into consideration that 2-meter distance is very important. The next standard is, see that you say good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on the time of the day. Then Madam or Sir, welcome to Rosso restaurant. Here I took Rosso as an example for the name of a restaurant. And one thing I must explain to you here, that the time of the greetings from 6 a.m. to 12 noon, we have to say good morning, and from 12 noon to 6 p.m. you have to say good afternoon, and from 6 p.m. to midnight you have to say good evening. So these things you have to keep into consideration while greeting the guest. The time is very important. Let's move on to the next standard. See that your voice is clear and loud and sounds friendly. Here you have to always be very humble and friendly as well to your valued guest. Then if you know guest name, greet guest by name. For example, good afternoon or good evening, Mr. Smith. If you know the guest name and if you pronounce that one along with the greetings, this will feel the guest that he is very important and you are remembering his name. On that way, he will be extremely satisfied for that. Let's move on to the next step, which is step 3. Ask guest regarding reservation. And the standards are, see that you maintain eye contact and keep warm smile, which is very important and it is extremely required throughout the dining experience. Then the next standard is, say that you ask, Madam or Sir, do you have reservation with us for lunch or dinner depending on the day of the time? Here, as you can see, that the phraseology is very important. It has to be always very friendly and humble whenever you are in a conversation with the guest. Then in case if the guest said yes, then we have to follow the next step, which is step 4. Ask the guest name. And the standards are, see that you say, may I have your name please. This one has to be the way I said, because this one will show the humbleness and the gentleness to the guest. Then let's move on to the next standard. See that your voice is clear and sounds friendly, which is important. See that you smile throughout the dining experience. Let's move on to the next step, which is step 5. Listen the guest name. And the standards are, see that you listen carefully when guest saying his or her name. You have to pay attention while taking or listening the guest name, because this one will give you the clue for the guest. See that you ask guest to spell it for you if you are not too sure. Sometimes you will find different people from the different parts of the world. Maybe you will get the American guest, you will get the guest from China, you will get the guest from Korea, and they will have different types of name. You may have the difficulties to spell their name. If you feel that you are in difficulty to find their name, you just tell them, sir, would you please spell it for me. In this way, you can avoid mistakes. Let's move on to our next standard. See that you write the name in the reservation system or book. Here, one thing to be explained, that some hotels, definitely 5-star chain hotels, they have electronic reservation system. For example, Grand Hyatt Dubai is using open table electronic reservation systems, which is very easy. On the other hand, if you talk about Rotana hotels in the whole Middle East, they are not using electronic reservation system. They are using simply manual books to perform the reservation process. So this both can be done electronically or manually, depending on the name of the chain. So let's move on to the next standard. We are still discussing step 5, listen the guest name, and the last standard is, see that you find the name in the reservation system or book together with all guest details such as name, the time, mobile number of the guest, how many guests, smoking or non-smoking zone or any special arrangements for the guest. In every 5-star hotel, for the restaurant, you will have 2 zones. One is smoking zone, another one is non-smoking zone. One has to ask while taking the reservation, sir or madam, would you like to sit in smoking zone or non-smoking zone? Because they will definitely go for smoking while they are having their meal in the restaurant. On the other hand, for the non-smoking people, they will not go for the smoking during their meal. So, to ask about smoking or non-smoking zone is very important while taking the reservation. And finally, special arrangement. Here, some people they dine out to celebrate special occasions like birthdays or marriage anniversary or any success of their jobs. So, the person who is taking the reservation also has to ask, sir or madam, is there any special arrangement for your dinner to be arranged by our hotel? Then the guest will tell, okay, I have to order a flower of bouquet, or I would like to order a cake for my birthday celebration or something like this. So, these are the informations also have to be taken during the reservation. Let us go to our next step, which is step 6, and that is reconfirmation. Let us go for the standards. See that you reconfirm the reservation. Then the next standard is, see that you say your reservation is on Mr. or Mrs., then the name of the guest, for the number of packs, which is known as the number of guests at the time of the dine-in, and smoking or non-smoking table, or also see that any special request if any. So, as I just mentioned that packs means number of persons in hospitality industry. This is actually a professional term for the hoteliers. So, packs means the number of persons. Let us move on to the next standard. See that guest confirm all the details. Then see that you say, excuse me, Mr. or Mrs. Then comes our step 7, which is ask the guest to follow you. Then the standards are this way please. Here one thing I must tell you, that the phraseology again, because you have to use the right phraseology at the right time to give the superior service to the guest. So, the next standard is, see that you keep with you sufficient number of menus with you depending on the number of guests. Then see that you indicate direction with you right hand open. Here one thing I must tell you, that showing the right hand to the guest, this is the right hand, and to show, this is to be used to show the direction for the guest. See that you keep warm smile in your face. Lead the way by walking in front of the guest. So, if I am escorting a number of 4 persons, I also have to be stand in front of the guest, as I told you earlier, by showing the right hand open and to escort the guest. Then comes the next standard is, see that you walk elegant and confident, not too fast or not too slow. See that guests are following you. See that you keep distance no more than 2 meters. See that you inform guests to mind their steps when walking up the stairs. Here one thing to be remembered, that for the person who is escorting the guest, to provide the notification whenever they will face uneven floors like this, sir or madam, please mind your step. In this way we can avoid possible injuries. Let us move on to the next step, which is step 8, show the table. And the standards are, see that you stop at 1 meter distance from the table, show that the table with your right hand open and say, this is your table. As I told you earlier, that in hospitality industry, whatever you are showing, you have to present your right hand open. So please remember it. Then see that you keep smile and eye contact. Then see that you have full focus on the guest. Let's move on to our next slide, which is step 9. As you can see on the screen that step 9, pull chairs out for the guest, and the standards are, see that you pull chair for the guest to sit, ladies first. Here one thing to be explained that if you are providing superior service, you always must provide the service to the guest. For example, if you are escorting a group of 4 persons, and in that group if you have 2 ladies and 2 gentlemen, you have to provide service first to the ladies first. Then you will provide the service to the other people for the gentlemen. See that you pull slowly and gently, no noise. Here one thing I must tell you that if you drag out the chairs, it will definitely cause hell of noise. So this will be extremely irritating for the other guest. Just to make sure not to make any noise, you have to pull the chair very gently so that you don't provide any noise. Then comes the next standard. See that guests are in progress of sitting on the chair and push forward, so the edge of chair slowly touch guest's leg. Then see that you do same procedure for all guests if possible. See that all the guests are seated and they are comfortable. Then let's move on to the next step, which is step 10. As you can see on the screen, present the menu to the guest. Let's go through the standards. See that you open and present the menu to all guests, ladies first. Here I explained to you earlier that ladies should be given the first priority while performing the service. The next standard is, see that you explain special dishes of your outlet. For example, soup of the day, catch of the day, while presenting the menu. The thing is that while presenting the menu, you have to give some sort of information to the guest. This will give the clue for the guest to set their mind whatever they are going to have, and this will increase the sales volume as well while presenting the menu. Then see that you also explain if there is any promotional events going on in your outlet. For example, happy hour or pasta night. In 5-star hotels, you will find so many food and beverage promotions throughout the year. So if your outlet is providing any kind of promotion, as I mentioned earlier, like pasta night or happy hours or Mexican night or Indian night, based on these Indian foods or Mexican foods, you must inform the guest. This will increase the volume of your sales by giving the information of your product. Let's move on to our last step of this topic, step 11, leave the table. As you can see on your screen, the standards are, see that you keep warm smile and eye contact. Then see that you wish them have a nice lunch or dinner depending on the time of the day. See that you walk 2 steps back and then turn your back to the guest. On that note, we have come to an end to finish welcome and seat guests for the standard of performance used in 5-star hotels all over the world. Now move on to our next topic, which is, as you can see on the screen, telephone alphabets used in hospitality industry. This is actually used throughout the hospitality industry. Let me tell you the sectors: in hotels, in motels, in restaurant and bars, in airlines, in recruiting agencies, and so on. So let's go through it, the telephone alphabets used in hospitality industry. As you can see on the screen, that A for Alpha, B for Bravo, C for Charlie, D for Delta, E for Echo, F for Father, G for George or Golf, both can be used. H for Hotel, I for India, J for Juliet, K for Kilo, L for Lima, M for Mike, N for Nancy, O for Oscar, P for Peter, Q for Queen, R for Romeo, S for Sugar, T for Tango, U for Uniform, V for Victor, W for Whiskey, X for X-ray, Y for Yankee, and finally Z for Zebra. Let's demonstrate it in our next slide. If a guest name is Mr. Jason Gilbert, then the following reservation agent of a hotel will use the following telephone alphabets. For example, as you can see on the screen that J for Juliet, A for Alpha, S for Sugar, O for Oscar, N for Nancy. So, Juliet, Alpha, Sugar, Oscar, Nancy. The reservation agent will write it down first. Then G for George or Golf, I for India, L for Lima, B for Bravo, E for Echo, R for Romeo, and T for Tango. So, George, India, Lima, Bravo, Echo, Romeo, and Tango. In this way, a reservation agent can avoid the mistake of misspelling of the guest name. If you make the mistake to spell the guest name rightly, it must be extremely irritating for the guest. So, in this way, we can avoid the mistake too. So, in this way, we can avoid the mistake while taking the reservation to spell the guest name rightly. So, that concludes our today's class. However, let me recap it very quickly. Recap of what you have learned from today's class, definition of SOP, how to welcome and seat guests, and finally, telephone alphabets used in hospitality industry. I hope you enjoyed and learned so many things used in 5-star hotels all over the world. That concludes our today's class. Hope to see you soon with new hospitality management techniques and explanation. Until then, keep smiling and do take good care of yourself. Thank you.